Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joined by my brother from another mother, the host who doesn't like toast, the breaker of chains. What else was it? Oh, you're not the Khaleesi. It's Brian E. Roach. What's going on, Brian? He's still doing the duck thing. Don't get me started, man. I'm already cranked up. This is the whole reason. Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, where'd Joe and Brian go? Are they going away?" We're not going away. See, we're here at least twice a week. We get a little bonus episode, even though it's the bye week. I think it's what I call the bye week blues in my tweet, Brian, because it seems like people are just generating stories out of thin air just to have things to talk about. And now we're going to talk about those. We're actually going to break out the Festivus in October, bust out the aluminum pole, the good, height to weight ratio, and air our grievances.
Excellent. I always love to air my grievances.
I have a lot of them to air. We're going to talk a little more, I think, later in the week, also as mandated by maybe a new sponsor we got. So that'll be some exciting news to tell all of you about later in the week as well. I don't know if the cat should be let out of the bag. I'm not sure who put the cat in the bag to begin with. That just doesn't seem... Anyone who has a cat...
Isn't PETA going to be mad if we put a cat in a bag? I don't know.
I think the cat would be mad it's in the bag, and that's like almost certain death with those claws. I mean,
cats are evil. Cats are evil to begin with. They only want to kill you. Cats just want to kill you.
And there's like a whole, I don't know if it was like a book, but there's definitely a website that accompanies it, like the ways the cat's plotting to kill you, like type thing. I mean, I'll have to dig that up. It's a very funny thing how it shows its trophies, brings it to your doorstep and stuff. That's for the outdoor cats. I have indoor cats, and they're just as evil. We love them. They're, I don't know, are they part of the family? Maybe.
No,
I don't know.
We don't.
I don't. They're definitely not man's best friend. I don't know. The cats just don't care, man.
That's right. They don't care.
Yeah, but anyways,
as the kids would say, they give 0 Fs.
Yes. This is the field where I harvest mine. It is barren.
Okay.
It's completely empty. In fact, it's torched. It is the scorched earth. So that's kind of, you know what? I can't honestly say that because now I'm going to dedicate a whole episode to all of this garbage I have seen since Sunday night proliferating the interwebs. Folks, are we that gullible? Seriously? Okay, I mean, I know everybody, it's big news. Stephon Tuitt got hurt. He's one of the highest paid players, having his best year to date, young guy, everything like that. And it's like I must have seen 50 people share it. And there's a website out there. I'm not going to name the name of it. There's more than one, but there's one for sure that I know as a fact because they offered it to me. And it was, if I shared their articles, you get a penny per view. And I swear, it's like, I might belong to like a dozen different Steelers groups, of which I, float in and out, and I may see things here or there. But one of the things is I always see links to this particular website. It's always the worst, most sensational headlines to things or titles to their articles to get people to click on it. And all these people share it because I guess, at the end of the day, if you get 3 rolls of pennies, it's worth, just spamming my Facebook page. I couldn't go down my news feed, and I know I'm getting made fun of by, some of the millennials in our group that are like, well, you shouldn't participate or do whatever with these groups. Well, it was all fine and dandy, but now all of a sudden this has become like so overwhelming. Like I can't even find like a post by like, Aunt Millie or whatever. I don't have an Aunt Millie, but if I did, I wouldn't know if she posted something, if she made like a pumpkin pie or like an apple strudel or fritter or something, Brian. 'Tis the fall season, and I don't know, there was a full moon the other day, and it may correlate with this, but I know we all feel bad about Stephon Tuitt. We're going to talk a little more about him and some of the Steelers' injuries, what that roster and everything is going to look like maybe going forward, with the exception of one position today, which is obviously the highlight, the spotlight, and the thing we're most focused on. But before we get to that, I still want to talk about the gullible people. We mentioned this on the last show, And it seems that it is taking a life of its own with the sensational, sawed-off, only telling you a part of the story headline type thing to get you to click. And if it seems like I have an axe to grind with clickbait stuff, well, I do. We compete in the same space for your attention, obviously, be it the podcast or our website where, we have a number of contributors and we write. We think we write quality content, I know there's some reviews on on iTunes that said these guys could even find a positive spin if they burned down Heinz Field. Well, me and Brian threatened after the Ravens game. We said if we don't win this game, we burn the stadium down. That's how it works.
Yes.
That would be the positive. And the positive would be there would be a lot of warmth. There would be more parking, maybe for the Pirates.
S'mores.
If people go there. S'mores would be you like s'mores?
No.
Oh. Well, never mind.
I don't like chocolate. Haven't we discussed that? I don't like chocolate.
Man, you don't like anything. You just yell at the clouds, but you like the Steelers, and you can't find anything but a positive spin. There were a couple trolls. There were a couple trolls in our iTunes reviews that we just found, and I thought it was kind of funny. They were like, "Don't listen to these guys." It was like 1 out of 50 positive reviews where it's like, don't listen, these guys are so positive, because everybody likes to hear, listen to people who basically whine and cry and complain and say fire Mike Tomlin and fire Randy Fichtner. Randy Fichtner, the guy that everybody was excited to have when they finally got Todd Haley fired as they wished, and Bruce Arians before that. And it's just, fire Keith Butler and get rid of this guy and scrap this, and the sky is falling, and the crying wolf and every other thing that you could do. Who would want to listen to somebody that's just so negative and bad? Aside from that, the reason why I rag on the clickbait stuff is because, I've grown up in a journalism background, and just, not taking everything at face value. I just feel like everything on social media is so TMZ-like these days. They saw the TMZ type formula, the shock jock thing, and it's like whatever you can get to attract people to come and, look at your advertising on your website and make a few pennies or whatever. And trust me, it's pennies. Even for how well we do, it's still pennies. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not worth selling your soul to have something that's, not of the best integrity, unprofessional, negative, just, kind of crap. I mean, we still criticize people, but it's not like we're going to go out there and, tell the world, fire this person and this person sucks or anything until they leave the Steelers. Then we could say they suck.
Yeah, well, for sure. Although I don't always. Well, it depends on where they go. Sometimes they leave and they go to a place that I don't hate, and then I don't say they suck. But then some of them go to the Patriots, and I'm not going to mention the names.
Is there actually like a team that you would prefer, or you wouldn't hate or anything when somebody leaves?
If they went to the Cardinals, I wouldn't hate them. I would say that's fine. You're at the Cardinals.
But that's like Steelers. That's like Steelers 2.0 or negative 1.0. Maybe it goes the other way because it can't be better. 2.0, the next version is supposed to be better. And
I don't hate them when they go to the Panthers. That doesn't bother me. I'm not upset about that.
Or the Broncos. Trey went
sure.
over there. Deontay Spencer. We weren't too.
Emmanuel Sanders.
Emmanuel Sanders. He was saying some stuff about Peyton Manning being better than Ben, and I mean it is. Peyton
yeah, but
Manning,
he said that after he got there. So it wasn't that he went to the Broncos that upset me. It was that he mouthed off afterwards that upset me.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So anyways, getting to my point with the sensationalism, and it's probably no better that we we made a title the way we did about quarterback or possible quarterback controversy for this show. But I mean, it's the truth. It's the topic we're going to be talking about. But the folks who saw that the song by Styx, Renegade, a Steelers pump-up song for, since basically, better part of Heinz Field's history right now, relatively newer type thing, but, 15 years maybe. I don't think it was right when they opened. It was like later in the 2000s when they started that. But it was played in L.A., not San Diego, Brian. Oh, that's my other pet peeve. This is the third season. Now, I know we make mistakes and slip on things. Everybody does it, or they say a name. I couldn't say Matthew Thomas last year. I kept calling him Michael Thomas. And you got Minica. And, we all have our quirks. But it's just like, hey, when somebody like if you say it once, it's like one thing. You say it repeatedly, I guess it's stuck in your brain, after a while. But it's like this is their third season that the Chargers are playing in Los Angeles. It's like it's the Los Angeles Chargers, not San Diego. But I thought it was just kind of funny as so many people did that out there, and that was one of the things. But the Renegade song was meant to be a prank, and I understand that the LA Times got a bunch of quotes from players like Forrest Lamp saying people should be fired, and Melvin Gordon, and they're like, I can't believe that they did that to us, but they cut the song off and did the internet prank, the famous internet prank known as a Rick Roll with Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up song in there. And it was meant to troll Steelers fans in attendance after, the Chargers finally scored in the fourth quarter. It was probably not... It would have been a lot different if they did something like that and the Chargers were, I don't know, it would have been lowbrow, actually, and I think it still is kind of lowbrow to do something like that, because if the tables were turned and then you do that to the Steelers, they score their first touchdown, they've been getting their, butts handed to them. Why would you play that? Now you're getting killed out there, basically a lopsided game 3 quarters in, and you're gonna play this song and try and troll 3 quarters of the stadium that's filled with the visiting team that paid for tickets, and they're propping up your franchise that you can only put 29,000 people in Dignity Health Park or whatever soccer stadium because nobody in LA cares about the Chargers, and you alienated all the people in San Diego too. And you're going to go play this Renegade song. Well, they chopped it off and just said that the players or the Chargers players were upset about this. And all I keep seeing is how people they're commenting on social media, and they're like, awesome, this is so cool, Steelers Nation, Steelers for life, and like all these things. And it's like, Phillip Rivers did the thing to Mike Hilton because he was mad about Renegade being played. And it was like, they didn't play Renegade for the Steelers fans. It was literally a prank. It was meant to be derogatory and insulting to Steelers Nation, and all these people are like, yay, and they got the pom-poms and stuff, and I'm just smacking my head against the desk still several days later as I continue to see hundreds of these posts in my social media feeds.
Yeah, look, we talked about it after the game. Personally, my thought is it's kind of funny. I don't, to me, Renegade is such a big deal to Steelers Nation. There was such a huge, presence of Steelers Nations at the stadium. Even though it's the Chargers stadium, to me, it's poking fun at the fact that, we're the LA Chargers, but all our fans live in San Diego. And and they're not here. And we haven't yet been embraced by the team, by the city. And saying, okay, clearly it's like a home game, so let's pretend. And I hope the guy who chose to do it doesn't get fired, because I thought it was hilarious. I don't think it's offensive to the Steelers Nation fans at all. I think it's funny. It's poking fun. It's something that's a tradition. That's fine. And we're overly sensitive about crap. And for the people who don't get the fact that it was a joke and meant to be a joke.
Yes. That's
come on. You need to absorb more than this fits in with your clickbait pet peeve. Absorb more than a headline.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's precisely my point. I don't necessarily mean it to be offensive. I thought it was kind of silly too. I'm like, really? They did something like that? And it's just amazing to me that I get messages and stuff from people. They're only seeing the headlines too. They're not clicking through and seeing, some of the exact quotes or the full articles, which, this is the thing. This is the problem. This is the reason why you get sensational headlines and stuff. The LA Times aren't getting those clicks. These people are just like, oh, that was awesome that they did that. No, the way they did it was not awesome. It was meant to be funny, but it was not meant to be, complimentary in a way too. It was meant to be positive for the Chargers in a way that, hey, we took your defensive stand, your defensive pump-up song, and we just smacked you across the face and scored a touchdown. That's what it was supposed to be. It came off like really amateur-ish because of the circumstance of them scoring it for the first time and getting on the board in the fourth quarter. So if you're seeing or hearing that out there, folks, now you know almost the whole story. I'm going to read this little clip here from the LA Times. Said offensive lineman Forrest Lamp, "We're used to not having any fans here. It does suck, though, when they're playing their music in the fourth quarter. We're the ones at home. I don't know who's in charge of that, but they should probably be fired." Continued. What the Chargers also didn't understand was that the song was being used as a setup of a joke that was then delivered when Renegade stopped playing and was replaced by Rick Astley's song, "Never Gonna Give You Up." So the LA Times, here's a writer that actually gets it, but the players on the field like Forrest Lamp didn't really get it. And for him to advocate someone should be fired, well, maybe do something so you have fans that show up and care about your team and do something and deliver on the field first. You know what I mean? I thought that was kind of like the hypocritical thing. So that's part of our potpourri here, the Renegade thing. Another one I've been seeing, Brian, is James Conner getting traded, and I could wrap that in 30 seconds. Not gonna happen. So, unlike Rick Astley, give it up.
Yeah.
I mean,
come on. Look, and you mentioned, you said a statement. It just threw me back to old time AM radio days with the guy who used to, and I don't even remember what his damn name is, so I don't know why I'm bringing it up. But he used to end all his things with, "And that's the rest of the story." And I don't know, it made me all warm inside.
And we can find that. You can hear me typing. Actually, I'm gonna Paul Harvey. That's Paul Harvey, man.
Paul Harvey, that's the guy. Yeah,
it was
Harvey.
on the tip of my tongue, too, and we would get, ostracized for not knowing that. Shame on us. Until next time, folks, well, anyways, at least prepared. At least prepared. We really, all I did was write a few things on here. I wrote to it, Renegade, Connor trade, quarterback controversy, because that's the big thing now. I'm not even going to, acknowledge this Connor trade. It was a Facebook page. I don't even think they have a website. I forget what they call it. I'm not even going to tell you what they call it because we don't need to shine attention on it. You don't need to seek it out. And if you're like me, it's going to hit you in the face anyways from all the idiots sharing it out there. Sorry, I went from Yinzer to idiot because there is a difference. Sometimes the Yinzers have a point. Sometimes the Yinzers are good people. These other, morons that are sharing this stuff, they're just, I don't even know that they watch the games. It's kind of like that thing where it was like the week 6 you beat the Jets and going to the Super Bowl thing that I saw last week too, and it's just like, I don't know, man. It's worse than people watching sometimes. I dread opening the social media account and seeing what's waiting there for me. Sometimes the same thing on YouTube too, to be honest. Actually, you know what? We had a few phone calls on our hotline too, and no, I did not ignore anyone that was out there. There was a lady who actually called about the Mason Rudolph hit, talking about, how you had to get rid of these in the game and opinions on that. And I think we covered most of that, but I forgot to give her some acknowledgement. And then there was another gentleman that rang in too, and I'm trying to think what he asked, but it was we had already done the show and we were beyond kind of the timeliness of discussing it, and I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, it was about the guys. We did end up covering it. It was Kevin from Columbus. So thanks for either shooting us a message via the text messaging or a voicemail. Thanks for sending it our way.
Speaking of that.
Mary Beth.
Speaking of that.
Mary Beth from Evansburg was the other one that was talking about the big concern with, Goodell being a puppet and everything like that. Seriously, something needs to be done. And we covered both of those, but I just wanted to throw that out there. We weren't ignoring anyone.
Absolutely. And just along those lines, because I wanted to bring this up several times, one of our YouTube followers consistently comments on wanting us to have a live show with call-ins and the ability to take live comments and live calls. We certainly appreciate it, and we have discussed it amongst ourselves several times. Probably not in the cards right now, but it's something we have thought about, and as time progresses, who knows?
Yeah, and some of the comments too. I mean, most everybody, 95, 98% of everyone, pretty cool. You get the few trolls that jump in there, usually from a visiting team, and they just want to. They just kind of want to rile you up, and I don't get baited the other way either. That's like comment bait, maybe, I don't know. But there's people. We have to bring this up. There's a couple of things going on today too, Brian. This is the aftermath of Monday Night Football and the hashtag the refs stink with the Lions and Packers and some penalties that didn't even happen there. I mean, for as much as people make fun of Booger McFarland, I mean, he's looking at it and he's just like, what is this? You know what I mean? I think he's very, I find him entertaining, to be completely honest, and he seems, I always thought he knew what he was talking about on XM radio. It's tough to make that transition and be talking for 3.5, 4 hours on TV too, on a live game and switching gears every week and stuff like that. I think he's done okay. It's good they got him out of the booger mobile at least, because that thing was annoying. And the Sunday night game the year before, it was like, they had to put the clear shield on the back of it, because originally it was like just a solid, backing behind it, and then the people who were paying for those several $100s for the lower level seats were getting blocked by his little booger mobile that was carting back and forth on the sidelines. Yeah. But he was talking about the phantom hands to the face and stuff like that. Dennis commented here, probably almost as soon as it happened, because this says actually, as we're recording this, it was almost like 12 hours ago when the game had just finished up there in Green Bay, and it was just like every opportunity they could give to keep the Packers alive. I don't know if people play favorites or seeing things at different angles. That's the thing that's the toughest, is the speed of the game, not blinking your eyes. Did you see what you really thought you saw? It's tough, folks. It really is tough. And I don't know how they correct it, other than, I'm telling you, it's still the Sky Judge thing. But I don't want to get on the officiating thing, because it seems like I talk about it every show. We need to talk about the other stuff that's been happening. There's a huge quarterback type news that's just, floating around here in the football world. And that's Landry Jones going in the XFL, allocated to the Dallas Renegades. I guess this is going to be my new favorite team, Brian. Bob Stoops is coaching, and he's from my hometown of Youngstown, Ohio. So he's a Youngstown guy too. And Landry Jones, the GOAT, former Pittsburgh Steeler. And there's a few other players that are really being set up there. That's going to be maybe some exciting offense. And of course, we just got done talking about Renegade. What better way to, get involved in the XFL than to actually have an actual Renegade or Renegades? I guess this will be the team that I pay attention to, since there's nothing else that's really like local or regional. They kind of have to play, since they play like in the odd time of the year, they have to play somewhere where it's a little bit warmer, I guess. Better climate. I mean, this was the deal with the AAF too, but I had to throw out the Landry GOAT thing, man. Don't call it a comeback. He's been here for years.
Okay.
That was wait a minute. I told you, least prepared team. That was the wrong quarterback news, wasn't it? It's all the people out here asking if Duck Hodges should be the starter now.
Oh yeah.
Facepalm. Facepalm and napalm. That's what I need.
Look, while I'm thrilled for you and your bromance friend Landry, I will freely admit the XFL is not in my current mind frame, nor am I like all of the other draftniks who are absorbing the XFL draft as if it was Christmas in October. I have zero interest at the moment. At the moment, when football is over and I have nothing else to look at, I might try the XFL again. I might not, but we'll see. I'm a purist. What can I say? And
a purist? I mean,
a purist. I'm a purist. The refs stink. It's a universal thing. It's pure that the refs stink.
It's pure something. I can tell you that.
Look, I gotta admit that if I had, I didn't get in the house until like 10 o'clock last night, or on Monday night, I guess I should say. And I don't know how I would have reacted to watching that game. I mean, I would have, I told you I was locked and loaded with my ref stink gift ready to go, and I didn't get to fire it off during the Steelers game. But boy, I think I would have fired it off a lot last night. If there was no more further evidence that the refs continue to stink and will always stink, and they just stink, last night is a perfect example. Now, that being said, I've gotten my ref rant out of the way. There is no quarterback controversy. I'm sorry. Duck was fine. We said this repeatedly. He was fine. He was also babied. He was held, he was given a lot of assistance. For people who think he looked better than Mason, I'm sorry you were watching a different game than I was. He didn't look better than Mason Rudolph. Mason is the guy when things come back. There is no controversy. Please stop inventing drama. I know that you miss Antonio Brown or Mr. Big Checks or whatever we want to call him, but he's back at school. Go to Western Michigan or wherever, Central Michigan, wherever he's at school, and you can cause drama there.
Well, wait a minute. We said don't call it a comeback. He's thinking now this is going to be cleared and he's going to have teams that are interested in him right now too.
He's delusional.
That's a polite way of putting it.
He's whack, yo. But yeah, look, I want to remain drama free as much as possible. So let's not start something that isn't there with this quarterback controversy stuff just because you are increasingly enamored of a guy whose nickname is Duck.
You think that's the only reason? I mean, it's a cool nickname. It's a cool story. I like.
No, we've discussed this many times. The reason is that we become enamored with the underdog. It's a blue-collar team. It's a blue-collar city. The people who follow this team have a tendency to want to root for the guy with the story, right? To root for the guy who has the biggest obstacles to success. And they are in love with those guys. We are guilty of it just like all the rest of the Yinzers out there. We were that way with Matthew Thomas last year.
I wasn't. No,
well,
I think you're mistaken. You know what? Yeah, I have my favorites. I'll say this much: I wasn't as big on the Cam Kelly bandwagon, but I sure was on Steven Nelson's jock.
Yeah, well, but that's different.
It's different because it worked out.
No, Steven Nelson was a high-priced free agent. That's
True.
not a guy that you bring in and think, okay, Cam Kelly I'll buy into, right? But, look, Mike Hilton is probably the biggest one of the group right now. I mean, Antonio Brown is that kind of guy, a sixth-round draft pick with not a lot, and everybody's rooting for him, which is probably why the whole flip-flop with him was more upsetting than it normally might have been. But that's the thing with Duck Hodges. He's a guy, nobody gives him a chance. Nobody says he should be there. He doesn't belong. He comes in, he does a good job. Doing a good job when the offense is specifically geared around trying to make it effective for you. And remember, the Chargers were depleted too. There was no Ingram, no other things. So Bosa doesn't have his line mate to help with the rush. They were preventing him from making what would be considered a lot of rookie mistakes by, really, limiting what his throws were going to be and where he was going to go with things. He did fine, and I'm happy for him, and I'm glad to have him as a Steeler. But no, he's not going to be the starting quarterback of this team, and nor do we want him to be long term. Mason's the guy right now. I'm not even sure Mason's the guy long term. I need to see more of Mason, but between the two, Mason's the guy right now.
Yeah, Mason has the overall everything pedigree. I understand guys fall and slip through the cracks all the time. Kurt Warner, you know what I mean? And, that other TB12 that's up in, the New England clam chowder states
Vomit.
There. Yes. Blah, blah.
Vomit.
Yes. My throat's a little sore from the vomiting and then swallowing the vomit. So, I can't even name him. It's even, I would rather say AB than TB. How bad is that, So, yeah, I don't mean to burst everyone's bubble. And I think we need to just kind of rewind and think for a second about how spoiled Steelers fans have really been at quarterback. I mean, ever since Ben has basically come on, a lot of people have a lot of love and affection for Charlie Batch. He came in as a backup with great defenses, 6-6 as a starter. Really only one or two big games that he's had. A lot of the rest were, basically I did this before with research, on par with Landry Jones. You don't believe me? Just look up their career stats. I was calling him Landry Goat, and I used to always do that just to kind of needle the Yinzers out there and tease them and provoke them and make them angry and make their heads explode and everything else, because for some reason they just absolutely hated this guy without realizing that it wasn't the same Steelers team that had all of these All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and even a future Hall of Famer or two. I don't know what Ferrier showed up on that list too, didn't he? Botsy. Yeah, I mean, that's something where you talk about one of the greatest free agent signings maybe in the team history. You had two there with Ferrier and Ryan Clark.
Yep.
And, aside from having Polamalu, aside from having the all-time sack leader, aside from having a defensive player of the year or whatever with Lamar Woodley or perennial, up until he got his contract, you had a guy that got shot out of a cannon and was getting all of these sacks alongside another guy who was a sack master. And, one of the last times they had like guys with double-digit sacks, more than one with double-digit sacks on the same defense. And, I mean, you had Casey Hampton, you had Aaron Smith. I mean, who am I missing? I mean, there's so many guys that were great. And, I mean, great. And then you went into, okay, they didn't have losing seasons, but they missed the postseason, a rebuild. And it was a rebuild in progress where they didn't have to wipe the slate clean like some of these other teams do. And it's still, even adding high-priced, high-profile skill players, pass rushers, wide receivers, whatever it may be, you're still at the same place you were last year, Cleveland Browns. So anyways, just, it's one of those things where a lot of people, I think they had some angst because not only just the pick that was used maybe for Landry, but he looked like crap in the preseason before. These guys, I mean, this year it was just like, holy cow, like all four of these quarterbacks, you had Ben, Dobbs, Rudolph, and Hodges. That's the way you entered camp. And there was already a quarterback controversy as to whether or not Rudolph could beat Dobbs for the backup job. People were already talking about that the previous year. Remember Ben talking about wasted picks?
Yeah.
And he kind of got rid of his radio show this season, and it's like he doesn't have to put his foot in his mouth as much anymore. So it's like, this is always something that's going to come up, and I regret even saying this or bringing it up right now, but it's going to be coming up in about 6 to 8 months again already because Ben's going to be getting back to health, and then we're going to see what Rudolph really does. And, it's nothing, I think, too serious that's going to keep Rudolph out for any more extended period of time with the bye week coming up and the Monday Night Football game, so you get an extra day of rest on top of that. And you may, maybe, depending on what the Dolphins game shakes out like. If it ends up being like, against the Carolina Panthers on Thursday Night Football last season and it was a blowout, maybe Duck gets in for a few reps and you sit Mason in the fourth quarter or something, the same way they brought Dobbs out last year too. But, they had all of this and there was already enough, there was enough sizzle to the steak there. I'm not going to say it was cooked the way you like it, and I'm not sure you're ever going to find it cooked the way you like it. But this is basically, a guy doesn't get injured and lose his spot. I don't think Ben Roethlisberger's losing his spot. Mason Rudolph definitely, I don't think, has lost his spot just based on 15 of 20 passing for, what was it, some chump change here, buck 32, a TD, and a pick.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. And to continue this, let's not make drama up where drama doesn't exist. Please stop complaining about Ben not being in San Diego.
San Diego.
Or wherever the hell that team plays.
I can't stop it, man. It's just too funny. I'm surprised you don't call them the St. Louis Rams still.
I would if I could.
Well, you probably will in a few weeks here when they get to the November 10th game and we start talking about that.
Yeah.
But that's because back when you used to wear the leather helmet without the face mask, they were actually the Cleveland Rams. So
I'm getting me one of them again, by the way. We saw them at the game, and those guys were older than me, but I'm getting me one of them leather helmets. Those were some badass mama jamas.
I do have to give another shout out to Steelers Nation, and not only for the invasion in Los Angeles. Some of the folks that go to these games, I mean, if they were missing all of their limbs, they would use their teeth to crawl to Heinz Field if they have some. I mean,
absolutely.
It's whatever's left of them. Maybe it's gums or dentures for some of the folks, but there are some real hardcore old timers that I give some serious props for. I mean, I am, half your age, Brian. Not quite, but I feel like
that's a lie. That's a lie.
I feel like I could barely walk as it is, and like, God, I'm walking up this rotunda and these steps and everything like this. And you got some folks out there, man. They got like the World War II hat on with their Steelers coat that's as old as I am, and they just. And I'm not making fun of them by any means. I really am giving them props. I mean, I it's amazing to me. I don't know that I could sit out in the elements and do that type of, physical activity when I get to their age. I just think about it. I'm like, wow, that's great. But I mean, I could give props to some of those guys. And that's what Brian was referring to was, somebody would be old enough to be his grandfather. And one of these guys had one of the old time, it was actually Steelers branded too. It was like the old leather helmets, the old timey 30s or whatever, the NFL 100, whenever they started wearing that stuff. That's basically where it comes from. And he's like, I got to get me one of those. I'm like, yeah, that's really fitting, man. So, but
it is. It's awesome.
I like it, but again, it's like I'm not trying to rag on Duck. I think I was starting to talk about being spoiled with Ben Roethlisberger, and I jumped from Batch to Landry Jones because I put them in the same category, but also like a Byron Leftwich. You barely got to see Bruce Gradkowski, Dennis Dixon. I think Doug Hodges was actually quite surprising, quite refreshing, because when you usually get into these type of situations, it's not pretty. We've talked about how many different quarterback situations in the NFL. I mean, just look at I don't want to look at we're going to be looking at the Dolphins soon, but who's down there right now? Rosen, that they traded for, and he's just, a dumpster fire. And then they bring in Fitzpatrick, and the way that game ends up ending on last Sunday. And it's just like, geez, oh man. And, there were people already like down on their luck with the Colts too, from Luck to Brissett. And I mean, they made that trade when Luck was already hurt before. So he's been with the program for a little while. But I mean, you look at some of the other things that go on in the NFL, and it's like Sam Darnold, okay? He ends up going out. I mean, the Jets team wasn't very good to begin with. It's new coaching. They're 1-4. I mean, they beat the Cowboys. Ha, lols. And, when they end up playing the Cleveland Browns, they get Trevor Siemian running around out there, who goes 3 for 6 and then gets, knocked out of the game, basically. And then Luke Falk has been their guy since, and Luke Falk's numbers are like, okay, he's got a 64.4% completion percentage, and he's appeared in 3 games, but he's thrown for no touchdowns. He's thrown 3 picks, 5.7 yards per average and stuff like that. And, you look at Mason, and I mean, Mason's been better than that in every single game this year. Okay, granted, some of this stuff's along the line of scrimmage and everything, but I thought the Jets were supposed to have a decent offensive line and decent receivers, and Le'Veon Bell, remember that guy? It's like, yeah. So, I mean, Ryan Clark is the one who said it. He said about the 49ers were looking good. Can you imagine if Mason Rudolph, who had numbers, on par with Jimmy Garoppolo or better, like he could put him in there and see them being maybe even better. And I think Mason passes the eyeball test. I think Duck does to some degree too. You got to look at like level of competition. I say once you get in the pros, all that other stuff's behind you. You're a pro. And that's true. There's a lot of guys who come out of a lot of smaller colleges that are gifted athletes and just overlooked, and they could rise to the occasion. I'm not saying the Duck isn't that type of guy. He certainly did what was necessary on Sunday, and they had some like really long drives. They had some good support. The offensive line kept him propped up. James Conner showed up, grown-ass man. We got to see Benny Snell football. You got to say it with like periods and pauses in it. And you get to see all these different things because, Mason got knocked out with a concussion, but Mason was looking like he was growing and has grown into the role before being knocked out of that Ravens game. It makes you really wonder the what if. But the reason I bring all of this up is like, I don't know that this would have worked the same way several years ago. I mean, we went through the Michael Vick experiment. Remember how painful that was? And
I do.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges are both better than that. I think that's where the bar is, where we set the bar high or low, and the expectation of Hodges, which is very unrealistic expectations for him. And I mean, okay, that was one game. We don't know how that might be in additional future games, and we still don't know that with Rudolph either, but Rudolph's the guy they invested a draft pick in. Rudolph's the guy who won the backup job. Rudolph is the guy that they sent the other quarterback, Josh Dobbs, packing and got a pick for because they felt this comfortable with this guy, and hopefully the face of the future, but that's going to be a future after Ben decides to walk away, maybe not next year.
Yeah, like I said, it's just, this is rightly or wrongly, this is their chance to determine whether Mason is in fact that guy. Is he the guy that can lead them down the road? Because they're gonna, we've talked about this ad nauseum as well. The fact that if everything had stayed copacetic, they weren't going to get a chance to see what Mason Rudolph could do before they had to renew his contract. Now they're going to have that opportunity before they have to decide whether they need to invest major dollars in Mason Rudolph. And as you said, so far so good, but we have to wait and see. And there's some legitimate concern with how he reacts to that, that injury, how he handles going into contact again. Is he going to be a little gun shy? Knowing he got, KO'd the last time out. But I don't believe that will be the case, but it's a viable point to make. And I think, that in and of itself is what you can take away from this season, if nothing else good even happens, because who's to say? But they're going to know what Mason Rudolph is. And right now, that's what they need to find out. They don't need to find out what Devlin Hodges is at this exact moment. I think they already know what Devlin Hodges is and it can be. It's a capable quarterback when pressed into duty, but probably not a full-time starter. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong about that too, although I don't think that this is the time to have that kind of a conversation.
Oh, no, it's definitely not. And there's nothing, what do you want to say? You could never have enough good quarterbacks, but not every quarterback is a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Correct.
We always knew that Landry was never going to be much more than a backup. And that's because not only of, Ben being entrenched in his position, but, you never saw this. You saw the confidence after Landry, kind of found his way into the position. I'm going to say it that way because Gronkowski got hurt and then they immediately brought a veteran in, and it was already this talk about this. And, this is experience both. This is where the coaches also deserve a nod too, no matter, I was talking about all the fire this guy and fire that guy. You aren't still in the conversation usually having a backup quarterback, let alone a guy who came into camp as the fourth quarterback. We've mentioned his story many times, undrafted, unsigned. That's the other big thing I think that's overlooked. So the draft goes by, and this guy from Samford who breaks all of these records, a lot of them held by Steve McNair, who was there's a guy that was still 1AA back then. It wasn't FCS. There's a guy who was in the Heisman conversation back then in college, for those of you who are young enough to remember that. And Brian, that was in your mid 30s. So, he went unsigned too, completely unsigned. No, so the Steelers, there was an invite to rookie camp because you got to have bodies. And I'm trying to think here. So Brogan Roback probably wasn't, I don't know if he was eligible to be part of that rookie camp or not. Dobbs was not because he was already a third-year guy. Rudolph was as a second-year guy. So it's first and second-year guys. And, depending on obviously experience and stuff too, there's a few other asterisks in there. But that's the reason why they bring in certain kickers and punters and things of that nature too, so you could run all of these different drills, give some of these guys a look. And then you might have a little bit of molding of that 90-man, or in this case 91, due to the international player Christian Scotland Williamson. You may have a little adjustment on the roster, not usually, and those guys are an extreme long shot to make it to the 53, which was the case of Hodges. And a lot of people wanted to keep Hodges over Dobbs, trade Dobbs. Well, circumstances, things that happen, situation, Jaguars, Nick Foles gets hurt. They have Gardner Minshew in there. They need somebody. You got a guy that's taken a couple snaps as an NFL starter, has some sort of value. And the Steelers feel comfortable. Hey, we got our future Hall of Fame franchise quarterback as our starter. We got maybe the guy in the future that just won the backup job, looks sharp in the preseason. The other guy didn't look as sharp. Let's move on this while he still has some value and we can get something out of it. And they did, and brought Hodges back, but not to the 53-man roster. They brought him back to the practice squad.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, this guy's starting and playing in a game in primetime national television on Sunday Night Football. It's a really great story, and he's earned that right to this point, because if the Steelers didn't feel they could have won, they would have done something else. And I don't necessarily. You see some of the other moves that have been made in years past. I'm going to bring Zach Mettenberger up, for example. you never saw or heard anything about that guy, and everybody was like, oh, just because he played well against them when the Titans and Steelers played once upon a time, he was fairly not so great, so to speak, right? And he kind of found his way out of the NFL, and actually he was supposed to be one of these guys in the XFL too, but went undrafted and unallocated so far, Brian, even in the XFL, sadly to say. But a lot of people were saying the Berger brothers, Roethlisberger, Mettenberger, get Landry out of there, and we never saw. And I think it's, there's one of these things where you live in a fantasy world because of fantasy football and video games and things of that nature. What if Mason Rudolph was playing for Ben? What if Duck Hodges got a chance? Now that we get to see what all that looked like, you get just a little bit because it's such a short window. It's 16 games. You're already 6 games down already this year. You're in the second quarter of the season. Every game is valuable, wins and losses. I mean, it sucks that the Steelers are 2-4, and we're going to explore some of their chances too after we get to see what happens. What is it? The Ravens have the Seahawks this weekend in Seattle. And the Bengals have, it doesn't matter. Oh, man. I mean, it's a shame for them. 0-6. And I think that's 0-6 for the first time in like eons, even for their, mostly struggling franchise. They get the Jaguars at home. So they don't have their bye until like week 9. But some of these things will shake out, and the Steelers have to put themselves in the best chance to win. And their best chance to win right now is actually going to be Mason Rudolph. It's going to be a guy who was a 3rd-round pick who a lot of teams maybe had a 1st-round grade on, who fell because he was in a draft class that took 5 quarterbacks in the 1st round. He was the 6th overall in that same draft. And we see how some of those guys are doing. Baker Mayfield leading the league in interceptions, right? You have Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. We already talked about Rosen with the Dolphins, and he even got pulled for, I think he's 38 now. Fitzmagic. Not Minka. That's now I forgot his name already. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Ryan.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, okay, Josh Allen up in Buffalo, they're trying to rebuild and do some things there. So jury out. You still got to see some more with some of that. And that's kind of where the Steelers are. You got to see it. And that would have been like kind of crazy. It's almost like, Garoppolo only got to play a handful of games as a Patriots guy before they had to make a choice. Do we keep Brady, an aging Tom Brady who still wants to play, keeps his body in, I said his name, keeps his body in great condition and this and that, and pay him all this money? And this is the other guy's kind of been groomed to be our future, and we really like what we got there, but you had to say la vie to him, and that's something that's way down the road. That's the controversy that'll be way down the road. This is still, I don't believe in losing your position to injury. It happens very infrequently. TB, Tom Brady is, one of those circumstances with Drew Bledsoe going hot hand. And, you might see it in college every now and then, but in the pros, it's usually one guy has a lopsided contract and you can't afford to keep him on the bench. Ben's kind of in that territory. As long as Ben looks like Ben, I think Ben will be back. But for now, we know that won't be until next year. So you could table that conversation, and then we need to see how good Rudolph is. Because here's the flip side of this. Let's say Duck goes out there in the next 2 games and they struggle against the Dolphins and the Colts. Maybe lose one or both of those games because you take a risk. We'll say Rudolph's all healthy and clear, okay? Under that, what do you want to say, assumption. Why are you doing that? Then you're going to be yelling to fire the coaches. Why didn't you put in the guy that was doing well before he got hurt? So you're going to go with the guy that you already had. Plus, he's also been with the team a lot longer. He has a full year. He had a full extra training camp and a full season under his belt and a full off season where Hodges is still a rookie. So you got to go with, he's technically the veteran, the second-year guy, Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. I think we can discuss it at length, and we have.
Yes, I know.
But it's not going to change anything. This is the way things are. This is the way things should be based on the play of each individual quarterback. Mason should be the guy who gets the starts, and Duck should be the guy who is his backup. Let's just be glad that right now we have what appears to be 2 capable backups to back up Ben, and that Fichtner knows how to tailor the offense to deal with what their strengths are. as we move forward, that's a good place to be. And let's just leave it at that. And avoid starting drama where no drama needs to be started.
We didn't start the fire. It's been burning since the world.
No, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't start the fire. But I would like to urinate on it.
I think we did a good job with that so far. So, folks, thanks for joining us. Once again, as always, thanks for joining me, Brian. And you've reminded me of a Family Guy skit where they always do things with music, but they had Peter humming. He's like, maybe there's instructions for how to start a fire. They're in the woods. They're in the woods alone. They're trying to build a campfire. Maybe there's instructions for how to build a fire in the song We Didn't Start the Fire. He's like, something, things and stuff. A lot of words. I don't know. It's like pretty good. I don't know.
My daughter knows that whole song by heart and could sing it for us if we chose. But no.
We'll pass on that. Although it's
not a wonderful song. Not because she can't sing, but just because no.
Yep, I hear you on that. So, yeah, just in one other footnote to add further, I guess, insult to injury. Did you see the top market shares for for NBC for Sunday Night Football? We got to close with this because this is even funnier to make our point. So the NFL has tried very, very, very much so to make LA a football market again. And the top 10 cities, top 10 markets for the Steelers-Chargers game on NBC. Now, this is kind of funny. It goes almost against what we kind of said. But Pittsburgh, huge overall, right? 41.9 household rating. Huge. 17.3 in San Diego. Las Vegas, now we're getting into the 12s. Las Vegas, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Denver, Norfolk, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Raleigh, Columbus, Ohio. There's something missing there. And I mean, I guess New York didn't watch this game either. New York and Chicago didn't care about it either. But the actual market the team's in, Los Angeles, didn't either. They weren't in the top 10. That's pretty crazy.
Well, that's because everybody that was going to watch the game went to it.
Well, you know what? That's a pretty good point. Everybody in LA that was going to watch it was Steelers fans, and they ended up there, and they made it miserable for poor Phillip Rivers. So, and he was infuriated, not because of Renegade, because they lost the game. So, anyways, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. Brian, thanks for joining me once again today, and I know you encourage our listeners to leave safe, clean, PG type reviews over on the various platforms.
Yes, please, and thank you. And just because I don't think we've called this out in a while, if you want to follow Joe, you can follow him at
Joe_Kuzma. Yes.
And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at Cannons Don't Thun.
Yeah, we retweet a lot on the Steel City under Grr account. There's not enough characters for the handle, but if you search us, we're out there on the Twitterverse as well, Facebook, Instagram, all of those fun things. I think the guy that does our exit thingy always says that stuff too, or he just says follow us on social media. So go check those out. Those are always in the show notes. Until next time, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as well. And we will be coming back to you later this week. We didn't forget about you. We're not going anywhere. So we encourage our listeners to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.